Hey everyone, and welcome to Real Talk Grimm Edition. I'm your host Josh, and this is the place where we dive into the dark, whimsical world of the Brothers Grimm. Whether you're a longtime fan of fairy tales or just starting to discover them, you're in the right spot. Each episode, I'll read a classic Grimm's fairy tale and then explore its deeper meanings, lessons, and how it may apply to our modern culture. From the well-known stories like Cinderella to more obscure ones that still carry a punch, we're going to get into what makes these tales so timeless, and sometimes downright eerie. But this isn't just about reading stories. It's about peeling back the layers and looking at what these stories really teach us. The Grimm brothers didn't shy away from showing the darker side of life. And in many ways, those darker elements hold some of the most powerful messages. Whether it's about good versus evil, human nature, or just the consequences of choices. So whether you're here for the ride of a familiar story or to uncover something you haven't heard before, stick with me as we explore the fascinating and sometimes twisted world of Grimm's fairy tales. Today, we'll be discussing the Jew Among Thorns. So sit back, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the tale. Now, before I begin reading today's story, a brief disclaimer. The Jew Among Thorns is a fairy tale that contains language and themes from its historical context, including references to Jewish characters and stereotypes. While these elements reflect the cultural attitudes of the time, I acknowledge that they are problematic and absolutely offensive by any standards. Though I will present this tale as it was originally written, obviously not in German, but you know what I mean, with the understanding that our intent is to explore it within its historical and literary context, not endorsing its harmful views. So let's proceed with the story, and then we'll get into its analysis. The Jew Among Thorns. There was once a rich man who had a servant who served him diligently and honestly. He was every morning the first out of bed and the last to go to rest at night. And whenever there was a difficult job to be done, which nobody cared to undertake, he was always the first to set himself to it. Moreover, he never complained, but was contented with everything and always merry. When a year was ended, his master gave him no wages, for he said to himself, "That is the cleverest way, for I shall save something, and he will not go away, but stay quietly in my service." The servant said nothing, but did his work the second year as he had done it the first. And when at the end of this, likewise, he received no wages, he made himself happy and still stayed on. When the third year was also past, the master considered, put his hand in his pocket, but pulled out nothing. Then, at last, the servant said, "Master, for 3 years I have served you honestly. Be so good as to give me what I ought to have, for I wish to leave and look about me a little more in the world." "Yes, my good fellow," answered the miser, "you have served me industriously, and therefore you shall be cheerfully rewarded." And he put out his hand into his pocket, but counted out only 3 farthings, saying, "There, you have a farthing for each year. That is large and liberal pay, such as you would have received from few masters." The honest servant, who understood little about money, put his fortune in his pocket and thought, now that I have my purse full, why need I trouble and plague myself any longer with hard work?" So on he went, up hill and down dale, and sang and jumped to his heart's content. Now it came to pass that as he was going by a thicket, a little man stepped out and called to him, Whither away, merry brother? I see you do not carry many cares. Why should I be sad? Answered the servant. I have enough. 3 years' wages are jingling in my pocket. How much is your treasure? The dwarf asked him. How much? 3 farthings sterling, all told. Look here, said the dwarf. I am a poor, needy man. Give me your 3 farthings. I can work no longer, and you are young and can easily earn your bread. And as the servant had a good heart and felt pity for the old man, he gave him the 3 farthings, saying, Take them in the name of heaven. I shall not be any the worse for it. Then the little man said, As I see you have a good heart, I grant you 3 wishes, 1 for each farthing. They shall all be fulfilled. Aha, said the servant, you are one of those who can work wonders. Well, then, if it is to be so, I wish first for a gun, which shall hit everything that I aim at. Secondly, for a fiddle, which when I play on it shall compel all who hear it to dance. Thirdly, that if I ask a favor of any one, he shall not be able to refuse it. All that shall you have, said the dwarf, and put his hand into the bush, and only think, there lay a fiddle and gun, all ready, just as if they had been ordered. These he gave to the servant, and then said to him, Whatever you may ask at any time, no man in the world shall be able to deny you. Heart alive, what can one desire more? Said the servant to himself, and went merrily onwards. Soon afterwards he met a Jew with a long goat's beard who was standing listening to the song of a bird which was sitting up at the top of a tree. Good heavens, he was exclaiming, that such a small creature should have such a fearfully loud voice. If it were but mine, if only someone would sprinkle some salt upon its tail. If that is all, said the servant, the bird shall soon be down here. And taking aim, he pulled the trigger, and down fell the bird into the thorn bushes. Go, you rogue, he said to the Jew, and fetch the bird out for yourself. Oh, said the Jew, leave out the rogue, my master, and I will do it at once. I will get the bird out for myself, as you really have hit it. Then he lay down on the ground and began to crawl into the thicket. When he was fast among the thorns, the good servant's humor so tempted him that he took up his fiddle and began to play. In a moment the Jew's legs began to move and to jump into the air, and the more the servant fiddled, the better went the dance. But the thorns tore his shabby coat from him, combed his beard, and pricked and plucked him all over the body. Oh dear, cried the Jew, what do I want with your fiddling? Leave the fiddle alone, master, I do not want to dance. But the servant did not listen to him, and thought, You have fleeced people often enough, now the thorn bushes shall do the same to you. And he began to play over again, so that the Jew had to jump higher than ever, and scraps of his coat were left hanging on the thorns. Oh, woe's me, cried the Jew. I will give the gentleman whatsoever he asks, if only he leaves off fiddling a purse full of gold. If you are so liberal, said the servant, I will stop my music. But this I must say to your credit, that you dance to it so well that it is quite an art. And having taken the purse, he went his way. The Jew stood still and watched the servant quietly until he was far off and out of sight. And then he screamed out with all his might, You miserable musician, you beer-house fiddler, wait till I catch you alone. I will hunt you till the soles of your shoes fall off, you ragamuffin. Just put 5 farthings in your mouth, and then you may be worth 3 halfpence. And went on abusing him as fast as he could speak. As soon as he had refreshed himself a little in this way and got his breath again, he ran into town to the justice. My lord judge, he said, I have come to make a complaint. See how a rascal has robbed and ill-treated me on the public highway. A stone on the ground might pity me, my clothes all torn, my body pricked and scratched. My little all gone with my purse. Good ducats, each piece better than the last. For God's sake, let the man be thrown into prison." "Was it a soldier," said the judge, "who cut you thus with his saber?" "Nothing of the sort," said the Jew. "It was no sword that he had, but a gun hanging at his back and a fiddle at his neck. The wretch may easily be known." So the judge sent his people out after the man, and they found the good servant, who had been going quite slowly along, and they found too the purse with the money upon him. As soon as he was taken before the judge, he said, "I did not touch the Jew, nor take his money. He gave it to me of his own free will, that I might leave off fiddling, because he could not bear my music." "Heaven defend us!" cried the Jew. "His lies are as thick as flies upon the wall." But the judge also did not believe his tale, and said, "This is a bad defense. No Jew would do that." And because he had committed robbery on the public highway, he sentenced the good servant to be hanged. As he was being led away, the Jew again screamed after him, "You vagabond! You dog of a fiddler! Now you are going to receive your well-earned reward." The servant walked quietly with the hangman up the ladder, but upon the last step he turned round and said to the judge, "Grant me just one request before I die." "Yes, if you do not ask your life," said the judge. "I do not ask for life," answered the servant, "but as a last favor, let me play once more upon my fiddle." The Jew raised a great cry of "Murder! Murder! For goodness' sake, do not allow it! Do not allow it!" But the judge said, "Why should I not let him have this short pleasure? It has been granted to him, and he shall have it." However, he could not have refused on account of the gift which had been bestowed on the servant. Then the Jew cried, "Oh, woe's me! Tie me fast!" while the good servant took his fiddle from his neck and made ready. As he gave the first scrape, they all began to quiver and shake, the judge, his clerk and the hangman, and his men, and the cord fell out of the hand of the one who was going to tie the Jew fast. At the second scrape, all raised their legs, and the hangman let go of his hold on the good servant, and made himself ready to dance. At the third scrape, they all leaped up and began to dance, the judge and the Jew being the best at jumping. Soon all who had gathered in the marketplace out of curiosity were dancing with them, old and young, fat and lean, one with another. The dogs likewise which had run there got up on their hind legs and capered about, and the longer he played, the higher sprang the dancers, so that they knocked against each other's heads and began to shriek terribly. At length the judge cried, quite out of breath, "I will give you your life if only you will stop fiddling." The good servant thereupon had compassion, took his fiddle and hung it around his neck again and stepped down the ladder. Then he went up to the Jew who was lying upon the ground, panting for breath, and said, "You rascal, now confess whence you got the money, or I will take my fiddle and begin to play again." I stole it, he cried, "but you have honestly earned it." So the judge had the Jew taken to the gallows and hanged as a thief. All right, now that we've heard The Jew Among Thorns, let's take a deeper dive into its themes, moral lessons, and some of the more troubling aspects of the story. So it's a tale of justice, irony, and power. At its heart, The Jew Among Thorns is a story about justice, though not necessarily fairness. We follow a hard-working servant who, despite being treated poorly by his miserly master, remains cheerful and honest. His kindness to a mysterious little man earns him 3 magical gifts. And from there, the tale takes this really sharp turn into a strange mix of poetic justice, mischief, and revenge. The servant uses his magic to first humiliate and then punish those he sees as deserving. The greedy Jew, even the judge. The story plays with the idea that power, once granted, can be used both for amusement and righteousness. But I think it also raises a question. Where's the line between justice and cruelty? So the moral takeaways. Like many Grimm tales, this story delivers clear lessons. First, kindness is rewarded. The servant's generosity towards the dwarf leads to his magical rewards. He doesn't act with expectation of gain, but his good heart is recognized and repaid. Greed and deception lead to downfall. Both the judge who sentences him and the Jew who is depicted as dishonest end up suffering for their actions. The idea being that those who exploit others will eventually face consequences. And then third, power can be used for justice or revenge. And I think this is where things get interesting. The servant's gifts give him near total control over others. But does he use them wisely? Making a man dance in a thorn bush or forcing an entire town to leap against their will, that's not exactly the work of a noble hero. It's like the story seems to say that it's fine to humiliate and punish people if they've done wrong. But it also leaves open the question, how much punishment is too much? And then there's the story's problematic elements. And I feel I have to address how, because it's very important. The Jew Among Thorns is steeped in anti-Semitic stereotypes that were common in European folklore and tales of the time. The Jewish character is depicted as greedy, deceitful, and ultimately deserving of humiliation and even execution. And this reflects the prejudice of the era, and it contributes to the harmful portrayals that unfortunately were repeated throughout history. Fairy tales often reflect the values and the biases of the societies that created them. And this story is a prime example of how folklore can reinforce negative stereotypes. Today, we recognize that these kinds of portrayals are offensive and inaccurate. And the servant could have been given a different kind of opponent, a dishonest merchant, a corrupt noble, something else without relying on anti-Semitic tropes. This is an extremely important reminder that while fairy tales can offer valuable lessons, they also need to be examined critically. Stories shape the way we see the world, and it's crucial that we acknowledge when they contain harmful messages. With that being said, how does this relate to the modern world? If we strip away the offensive elements, the story's core themes still resonate. We still value hard work and kindness. We still see stories of powerful people abusing their authority and getting their comeuppance. And we still wrestle with questions about what true justice looks like. But perhaps the biggest modern takeaway is this. Just because a story is old doesn't mean it's right. We should celebrate folklore for its creativity and its historical value, but we should not be afraid to call out outdated, harmful ideas when we see them. And when necessary, we can reimagine these tales in ways that preserve their moral lessons while removing the parts that promote discrimination. So my final thoughts. What do we do with a story like this? Do we ignore it? Do we rewrite it? Or do we learn from it? And I'd argue for the last option, because fairy tales, like history, aren't always comfortable, but they give us insight into the past, both the good and the bad. But what do you think? Does the servant go too far in his revenge? Could this story be told in a way that keeps its lessons but removes its prejudices? Let me know your thoughts, and if you want me to reimagine this tale in a way that ditches the harmful elements while keeping the heart of the story, I'd love to do that in a future episode. And that, folks, is going to wrap up this episode of Real Talk Grimm Edition. I hope you enjoyed diving into the Jew and the Thorns and the meanings and the deeper side as much as I did. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you have thoughts on today's tale, whether you agree, disagree, or have your own take, I want to hear from you. Reach out to me on social media at Real Talk on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Or send me an email, therealrealtalk@gmail.com. Let me know what you think, or just say hi. And if you are enjoying the show, consider leaving me a rating and a review. It really helps others find us here, and it keeps the conversation going. But as always, thank you for listening. And until next time, stay curious, question the stories around you, and keep exploring the darker side of fairy tales.